If you are looking to hire a B2B lead generation agency to handle your cold email campaigns, then stick around because I'm about to tell you 7 uncomfortable truths about how lead generation actually works that most agencies would prefer not to say out loud. Not because they're lying, but because saying them would probably scare half of their prospects away. So today I'm going to tell you all 7 because you deserve to know exactly what you're buying before you commit to 60 to 90 days and spending 5 figures plus to an agency. So let's jump straight into truth number 1, which is that cold email takes time, and the 60 to 90 day timeline is really a non-negotiable. And don't expect to see anything, no results, possibly no replies, nada within the first 30 days. So this is really the first uncomfortable truth. If a B2B lead generation agency promises you qualified meetings before day 60, they're not planning to do it properly. Okay, so every reputable lead generation agency will tell you their timeline is probably around 60 to 90 days. Those first 30 days, you won't get anything. No meetings, no replies, pretty much any visible activity. And just jumping into what the timeline could look like for that. So first kind of 3 weeks, if you're being super conservative, maybe 4, your domains are just going to be warming up, because if you skip this phase, then you're just going to land straight to spam. And then after that ramp up period, really after the warm up period, really you want a kind of slow ramp up, ideally between 10 to 14 days before you're at full sending capacity, which means that you're unlikely to get to full sending capacity if it's done properly before day 35 to 45. And then from there, it's not just plain sailing. You're not just going to immediately start booking highly qualified meetings. You need time to optimize, to split test before you actually get messaging market fit. And so really, you can expect quality results to really start happening around kind of day 60 onwards. So if you're looking for instant straight away results, then you're probably better off with maybe Facebook ads or something like that. And lots of companies, you work with them and agencies haven't really set expectations. And so it comes day 20 and they're wondering if it's working or not. And the honest answer is yes, but they're looking at the wrong metric. You should be looking at email volume and reply rates and not necessarily meetings, because you're unlikely to book any meetings, as I said before, probably day 45 and then day 60 onwards. So a couple of actionable takeaways there. When you're evaluating a B2B lead generation agency, ask them to walk you through exactly what happens in week 1 to 4, what results that you should be expecting, what metrics they should be tracking. If they tell you that you will be seeing meetings in week 2, they don't understand the process. If they can't tell you what you'll see in week 3, then that's probably a red flag. So if you prepared for the timeline, you're ahead of a lot of buyers. But here's where it gets a little bit uncomfortable. The timeline is long, but not all of those 90 days are created equal. So let's talk about truth number 2. Your first campaign will probably fail. Okay, so this is the second uncomfortable truth. Your first B2B lead generation campaign, the one that goes live in, let's say, week 4, is probably not going to work. Okay, this is the thing most agencies won't say. They'll tell you we test and we're optimizing. That's right. But what they don't say is that the first test is usually a dud. And the reason is simple. They just don't have your data yet. They think they know your ICP. They think they know what messages and angles will resonate, but they don't actually know. So they're guessing, probably based on your onboarding call, what they've seen work for other clients in your vertical. And so your first email sequence is probably going to be pulling like a 2 to maybe 5% reply rate, when really a fully optimized campaign, you're looking at ideally more like 8 to 12%. And your first miss might miss 40% of your actual decision makers because the data sources weren't complete and maybe your subject lines were too salesy. And that's fine. That's how this process works. But if an agency tells you the first campaign will probably crush it, they're either overselling it or they're inexperienced. So an actionable takeaway, ask the agency, how many iterations do you typically go through before the campaign hits its stride. What does that look like? And the honest answer should be at least 2 to 3 campaigns. If they promise home runs on the first swing, they're probably leading you down the garden path. So expect the first month to be a little bit underwhelming, expect iteration, and expect to give the process real runway. But here's the truth that most agencies actually do hide, because it does make them look bad. Truth number 3, they can't guarantee lead quality, even though they might imply it. So the third uncomfortable truth is that a B2B lead generation agency can't actually guarantee that the leads they deliver are qualified. I know this is one that changes how you think about the whole thing. You're paying them specifically for qualified meetings, but they can't actually guarantee it. And here's why. You can think qualified lead kind of has 3 layers to it. So the first is your ICP match. So that's your ideal customer profile. Agency can control that. They can build lists that match your ideal customer profile. The second is buying intent. Is the person actually looking to solve the problem that you solve? And the agency can, to some degree, control this. They can test messaging. They can look for different signals that might indicate certain pain points that might match your solution. But still, to some extent, you're taking an educated guess. And, although you might be able to increase your probability, you still can't be 100% sure that you're hitting qualified prospects every time. And then the third, kind of similar, is authority. Is the person that whose inbox you landed, can they actually make the actual purchasing decision or recommend it? And to some extent, again, we can target certain titles, but really we don't fully know in that organization if, let's say, the CTO has the right to sign off, or whether it needs to be escalated. And if that's the case, would that be a qualified lead? So most agencies, what they're actually delivering is contacts who match your ICP, show interest in the cold email, respond, and have a job title that suggests decision-making quality, which is not exactly the same as a 100% qualified lead. And so when an agency says, we'll deliver qualified leads, ask them, what does qualified mean to you? How do you define it? What's your disqualification process? And if they give you vague answers that, like, they respond to your outreach, so they must be interested, that's not really a real qualification process. A good agency will have probably a more well-defined framework and will be honest about what they can and can't guarantee. So, by the way, I did put together a framework of how to actually evaluate a B2B lead generation agency. It has everything in there that we're going to be talking about in this video, specific questions you can ask to make sure that you're making an educated decision when hiring a cold email. So let's go on to truth number 4, which is that deliverability can collapse without warning. It's way more fragile than you think. And most people come into cold email, they think you can just set up a domain and start sending 100 emails a day. Sadly, it doesn't work like that. And fourth thing that often B2B companies don't really think about is that deliverability can break. It can break suddenly, and when it does, your entire campaign stops working overnight. And so your agency sends emails from a domain. That domain has a reputation. That reputation can tank quickly if something goes wrong. And the reason why, and these things that you need to understand, is that domains don't have one reputation score, they have dozens, all right? Google checks your sender reputation. Microsoft checks your sender reputation. And they all have kind of slightly different signals. And so if you piss any of them off, your mail flow stops. And here's the one thing that kills deliverability outside an agency's control, is that oftentimes you get disgruntled prospects who mark your email with spam, and you can kind of understand why. Many of them might be getting bombarded with cold emails all day, and that hurts. One of the 50 companies using the agency shared infrastructure, if they are using a shared infrastructure, if one person marks that as spam, it can affect the whole domain. So that hurts you too. So, which brings us on to another point, is that some agencies are going to be using sending domains that are dedicated. You have your own dedicated sending infrastructure, and some aren't. And if they're not using dedicated infrastructure for your campaign, then you're going to get impacted by other companies. And here's what you need to understand. Domains don't just have one reputation score, they have dozens, because Google is going to check your sender reputation, Microsoft is, and they're all going to be doing it in a slightly different way, looking for slightly different signals. And if you piss any of them off, your mail flow stops. And here's the thing, a lot of the things that kill deliverability are kind of outside an agency's control. Oftentimes a big killer can be disgruntled prospects who mark your email as spam, and that hurts, especially if they're using like a shared infrastructure and that one domain is being used for other clients, and so therefore their bad emails are going to affect your campaign. Which leads me on to another point. Make sure that your agency has set up dedicated sending infrastructure with your own domains for your campaign, so that if something goes wrong with another campaign from another client, you're not impacted by it. Another thing that you want to maybe ask a agency is which email hosting they use, because sometimes you can have a situation where there's problems with Google or there's problems with Microsoft. One of them suddenly starts getting tighter on their spam controls, and this stuff happens all the time. So all your Google domains go down. And if you only have Google domains, if there isn't a diversity of email hosting, then you can end up in a pickle and you have to keep your campaigns on pause for a while. So some actionable takeaways: ask the agency about their sending infrastructure, whether it's dedicated or shared with the domains. Ask them what happens if deliverability takes a hit. What's their process? What's their fees for fixing that? How often does that often happen? And they should be able to give you an honest answer. They minimize the risk. If they make it sound like, we're landing in inboxes the whole time, they're probably not being truthful. So there are things that can go sideways, but if you're prepared for those things, the picture should start to look different. So here's the fifth truth that separates agencies who know what they're doing from everything else. Truth number 5, you need, I would say, at least 5 iterations, realistically more, before it actually works. This is not a set and forget thing. This isn't like Facebook ads where if you're getting a good CPL, you can kind of just let it do its thing and the algorithm kind of takes care of it. This is a lot more labor intensive when it comes to split testing and different variations. And by iterations, I don't just mean kind of tweaking the subject lines. I mean pulling on a number of levers like the angle, the pain point, the list, the offer. I mean, really, there's so many things that you can test and iterate on before you actually get a really nice messaging market fit. And oftentimes, all of you guys are going to be having slightly different services and products, and the agency is often going to be the first time they've worked with that. I mean, maybe they've worked with another company similar to yours, but it's not going to be exactly the same. It takes iteration. So here's kind of an example of what iteration can look like in practice. Agency's best guess, they start off, they have an idea of what they think will work. Oftentimes the results are disappointing. They change the angle a little bit, target maybe a different pain point. Results improved a little bit, but still not what they should be. And then maybe they try a different buyer persona with your ICP. Results start to work a bit better. They refine targeting and messaging based on what's worked. On the third iteration, the results are starting to look solid, and then they might double down on what's worked, remove waste campaigns, and continue that optimization process. Really, a good agency should be split testing different variables at least once a week. And so don't sign a long contract unless you're absolutely sure that the agent is going to fully optimize the campaign. But here's what most agencies tend to hide behind: vague language, and that's no one agrees on what qualified actually means. Kind of similar to what we've discussed earlier, but the sixth uncomfortable truth is that the word qualified sometimes means different things to different B2B lead generation agencies. And sometimes it means something different to you and it means something different to them. So this is where a lot of deals can blow up. The agency delivers a lead. Your sales team looks at it and says, this person isn't qualified. The agency says, yes, they are. They replied. They fit your ICP. And you kind of having two different conversations. So some different definitions that I've seen. So kind of some agencies might define a qualified lead as just responded to the lead, has the right job title, and that's kind of it. And then maybe another definition, they've responded and there's kind of more signal of interest, and maybe they have the authority to purchase. Some might define it as responded, has a very specific problem that gets identified, has budget to allocate, and then no doubt your sales team, all of your hungry closers, are defining it even more stringently. They want a relevant company, decision-making authorities, urgent to buy, has jumped on a discovery call and expressed explicit intent. That for them might be interested. So those aren't even in the same zip code. So before you sign a contract, have a real conversation, and we've got to kind of live in reality, but you should have a understanding of what exactly is meant by their definition of a qualified lead. If they say 100% of all of their leads are qualified, they're lying. If they say 60%, great. We know that 40% are going to be rejects. If they can't define it, don't hire them. So there's ambiguity in definitions, there's iteration required, deliverability can break. These are the things that a good agency understands. But there's one more thing, and it's one thing that most agencies will absolutely not tell you, and that is truth 7. They won't tell you when to fire them, and they'll let you waste your money. So this is the 7th and probably most uncomfortable truth. A B2B lead generation agency will not proactively tell you when it's time to end the engagement and move on. They'll let you keep paying. And this is one that costs companies the most money. And it's not because agencies are evil, but because they have misaligned incentives, okay? They benefit from you staying. They don't benefit from you leaving, even when it's the right move for you. So here's often how it plays out. You're 3 months in, the campaign is still pulling, 3% reply rate when it should be pulling an 8 to 10% reply rate. The meetings booked don't really match your definition of qualified. The agency should be saying, guys, this isn't working. Let's either pivot dramatically or maybe you should find another partner. Instead, what they'll probably tell you is, we're still in the learning phase. We need more time. Give us another month. They'll maybe start talking about expanding to LinkedIn or ABM. Or maybe the problem is you just need more channels when actually they're just not executing well on the first channel. And so the company keeps paying, the agency keeps stringing them along, the relationship collapses, and then by month 6, the company has burned, 16 to 24K on an agency that never worked. So, actionable takeaway here. Here's what you should ask an agency. If it's not working after 90 days, what is the exit strategy? At what point would you recommend we stop and try something else? And would you recommend that even if it means losing my business? Would you honestly give me your honest opinion, even if it means you stop getting 5K every month? So if they don't have a framework for that conversation, they're not going to be aligned for you. You need an agency that's willing to fire you if it's not working. So those are the 7 uncomfortable truths about B2B lead generation agencies. The timeline is long. The first campaigns fail. Quality isn't guaranteed. Deliverability can be fragile, often is fragile. Iteration is constant. The split testing never ends. And definitions can be unclear. And they won't tell you when to stop. So most people are going to watch this and still call an agency and ask the same questions they've always asked. How much do you charge? How many meetings do you book? And they'll get the same vague answers and the same oversold promises. But now you know what to actually look for, and now you know what to push back on Now, if you are ready to have a real conversation about whether a B2B lead generation agency is actually the right lever for your sales strategy, and if it is, what success actually looks like, we work with B2B companies that have an established product market fit, ideally doing 1 mil ARR plus a month, but possibly as low as 500K. We don't oversell, we don't promise magic, but we'll be honest about what's possible and what's not. So if that sounds like it's of interest, I'll stick the link below. You can go ahead and book a 20-minute call with me or one of my team. Bye for now.